Parshas Yisro, printed in Chelik Tazayin, 5th Sichah. And the last thing we're explaining is the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tiv. The Rabbi came with a chiddush that according to the Mechilta, the gather of mosfim Mechol al Kodesh is a gather in the Chefza of Shabbos. That the Chefza of Shabbos makes that what it's before Shabbos and after Shabbos, it makes it a Chefza, a Kedusha of Shabbos. And he explained the reason why it only works on Shabbos and not Yom Tiv is because Shabbos is Mikatra v'Kaima. Shabbos has the sanctity itself. The etzem inyan of Shabbos makes Kedusha. There's a Kedusha. However, when it comes to Yom Tiv, Yisro the Kachinu Lizmani. And therefore, it has to do with the Gavra. And if it has to do with the Gavra, then you can't say that the etzem inyan of Shabbos has a chefza of Kedusha. Okay, we're holding now Vav. So he says like this: the chilik in the limud hanal zwischen the Mechilta and the Gemara is negel halacha. The difference between the way that the Mechilta learns, that he learns it out from Zachar Shemer Shabbos the Kachem Mesifim Mechol al Kodesh, is by Shabbos. When the Gemara learns it out from Shvais, whenever it says Shvais, means that you have to Mesifim Mechol al Kodesh, which would apply to Yom Kippur and to Yom Tiv. So he says will be a practical nafkamina, a practical difference in halacha as well. And for the nafkamina zwischen Zeh Lamaisa, and it's going to be also a nafkamina in halacha lamaisa. And he explains: Leidi Gemara is the chiyuv to meizu zayin mechol ala kodesh the zelber b'chol malkim shenemer shvais. According to the Gemara, the obligation to add from the mundane to holy is equal as Shabbos, Yom Kippur, and Yom Tiv, because he learns it out that anytime it says the word shvais, you have to meisim mechol ala kodesh. It says ein tzivay ala adam. As b'chol malkim shenemer shvais. So our meisim zayin the zelber shvisa mechol ala kodesh, that it's a obligation on the person that every single time it says the word shvais, there's an obligation on the person to be meisim mechol ala kodesh. Whereas the farver the din meisif mechol ala kodesh by Yom Kippur and Shabbos and Yom Tiv upgelernt from ein pasuk, and therefore Sai Shabbos, Sai Yom Tiv, and Sai Yom Kippur is all learned from the same pasuk of Shvais. Hayes has das is the zelber tzivay, because according to the Gemara, the Brisa, he learns it out from any time it says the word Shvais. It means that you have to be meisim mechol hakodesh. So he learns it out that Sai Shabbos, Sai Yom Tov, and Sai Yom Kippur, we're all learning it out from the same place, the same concept, that a person has to be meisim mechol hakodesh. Shenkel like the Mechilta is the Teisefes by Shabbos and inyan in Shabbos. However, according to the Mechilta, Teisefes Shabbos in Shabbos has to do with Shabbos itself. Shenkin Teisus Yom Tiv, Yom Kippur Yom Tiv is Beif and Acher. However, according to the Mechilta, he's going to learn that yes, you're right that there's an inyan to be Meisim Mechol al Kodesh. It's the first Sichah.
No, but what is?
Vav. Okay. Mashenkin according to the Mechilta, he's going to learn that Meisim Mechol al Kodesh has to do with Shabbos. There's an inyan of Meisim Mechol al Kodesh by Yom Kippur and Yom Tov, but that's something else. Okay, so now that he established the difference between the Mechilta and the Gemara, if Meisim Mechol al Kodesh and Shabbos is an inyan b'fnei atzmai, so he says the fun kommt areis and afkimin al halacha will come out a practical difference in halacha. According to the way the Gemara learns Teisves Shabbos, so it's a mitzvah say that you have to daseis. If a person, this is what Mati you were saying yesterday, if a person is going to do now malacha, let's say in Teisves Shabbos, under Kabbalah, even let's say he was not mekabel Teisves Shabbos, like we explained that even in Gavra, there's a difference between the first way is it has to do with the person, and the second way is that the Shabbos makes that the person has to be mekabel Teisves Shabbos against his will. But based on that, it says Nar Oiver Oif and Asay, the mitzvah from Tishbeisu, Shabbatchem. So if he's going to do malacha in Teisvus Shabbos, then he's only going to transgress a mitzvah Asay. Why? Kol Makam Shenemer Shveis Meisifin. So if you're going to learn like the way that the Gemara learns, that Kol Makam Shenemer Shveis Meisifin, that means that Sai Shabbos, Sai Yom Kippur, Sai Yom Tov, let's take Shabbos, that if a person is going to do a malacha on Shabbos by Tosefes Shabbos, according to the Gemara, he's only going to be over a mitzvah Asay. However, we just established that according to the Mechilta, Shabbos has a special power, that it pushes the Kedusha in front of it, and behind it, kumtes, as the Yisro Malacha in Zman HaTosefes is verbunden eich mit den Lav. So it comes out that if it has the Kedusha of Shabbos, milafanav malachedav, so then if a person is going to do the malacha, a malacha on Shabbos, he's going to be over a lav leisasako malacha. Was is da mitzvah Kedusha Shabbos. So we said in Vav, what's going to come out in nafkamina lahalacha, that according to the that it's not only like a nice svara, but also it's an nafkamina lahalacha. According to the Gemara, on Shabbos, if we're saying kol makom shenever shveis meisifin, so that's a mitzvah asay. So if a person is going to do malacha at that time, he's only over a mitzvah asay. Mashing, and according to the Mechilta, who learns out, not from shveis, he learns it out. Shabbos the katshe, and he learns out that Shabbos has the kedusha that it's in spashim milafana malachedov. So it comes out that if he's over leis asay, then he's over the leis asay of leisasa kol malacha. And as we know, on Shabbos there's ramifications. If a person's over a leis asay, depends if there was shaygig or mazid basra. Okay.
Either way, everybody's over on something,
right?
You're saying that you have to be moisid.
So you start talking like practical halacha? So practical halacha, I believe the Alter Rebbe passes like the Gemara. So you don't have to. And even in Mosfim Mechol HaKodеш, how long is that? When is that? It's very unclear. In the Ha'aras, the Rebbe's, these Ha'aras, you could spend hours on them. Fascinating. Fine. All right. Oy Zayin. Now, so based on what we discussed, as loy mafshin on pluksa, that we try not to multiply disputes in Shas or Bechlal in poskim or both in the Chedeg Yadav Zagin. So we should say seemingly as oich di Gemara halt wie die Mechilte as Shabbos atzma is tedet melafanav malachedev. So seemingly we should say, based on the klal, that loy mafshin on pluksa. So let's say that the Gemara really and the Mechilta don't disagree. Everybody holds that Shabbos is tedet melafanav malachedev. Everybody agrees that Shabbos like malls, what's in front and what's behind it. The Gemara is nar meisif nachal limud. The Gemara just adds another limud. As b'Shabbos is oich da mitzvah v'chiyuv. If you mention mekabel zayin desav mechal hakedesh, the Gemara is just adding another thing. That for Shabbos, it's also a mitzvah, an obligation for a person to accept the added time from the mundane to the holy. So you can say l'cha'ira, seemingly, that the Gemara and the Mechilta don't argue. Everybody agrees teidef milafana malachedev. Shabbos does that. So what's the Gemara adding? The Gemara is adding that Shabbos, you have to also be mekabel on yourself to Tosefes Shabbos. Now, so the Rebbe says, even though this is it's like a strained way of learning. Why? Since this is a halacha in Shabbos, that Shabbos is teidef milafanav malachedev, as Shabbos gufa is teidef, versus the mesa de gavra. So if you're going to say that everybody agrees that Shabbos is teidef milafanav malachedev, but the Gemara is saying is that the person has to also be mekabel. What does the person have to be mekabel on? The Shabbos does it by itself. What does the Kabbalah do? So he says, you could explain that you find this idea in Shabbos. On one hand, you're saying that Shabbos, the Kedusha of Shabbos is sanctified by itself. On the other hand, there's a mitzvah say to Zochar Shem Shabbos lekatche. So, obviously, a person has to do something in his pu'ula for Shabbos. Otherwise, you could just say that Shabbos is Mekadosh V'Kaim. So Al is Benida Dedan. So the same, similarly, you could say in our case, Hagam as they Sefer Shabbos is Azman Kodesh Ma'atzma, even though Shabbos is holy on its own. From deswegen, nevertheless, as Eichta Achiyuv, if an Adam some Mekadosh Zman, there's also an obligation, nevertheless, for the person to sanctify the time. So it's a very good, it's a good explanation. That be'emes, no one's arguing. The Gemara is just adding that you have to Zachiyuv on the Gavra to also be Mekadosh al derech Zachar Shem Shabbos L'Katshi, and everyone's happy. We can go home. No machlekes. So why can't you learn like that? So the Rebbe said, however, you cannot learn this way. From the Gemara is Madish Kanal, Kol Malkum Shenem Shvois. What does the Gemara say? That every time it says the word Shvois, it means Meisim Mechol Ala Kedesh. So them is mashma. So the Rebbe is going to say there's three things that are mashma from these words. Kol Malkum Shenem Shvois. Number one, Aleph, as the Esav Mechol Ala Kedesh, Bashtet in Shvisim and Melacha. That from the mundane to the holy applies to what? To resting from work. Or nitin dem lakachi from tesefes, and not to the command to sanctify it by adding it. In other words, if you're saying that the Gemara is learning that there's a mitzvah, like there's a special mitzvah to be mekadesh the Shabbos, that really everybody agrees that Shabbos is teiref milafanav malachedav, but the tesefes, but the Gemara is saying that a person has to be mekadesh on himself. That's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Kol Makom Shenemer Shvais, which is mashma, the Gemara is speaking about resting, not about being mekadesh. Base. As dos is an inyan, was is gleich b'chol mokim. B'Shabbos, b'Yom Kippurim, u'b'Yom Tov. From the Gemara says clearly that Kol Mokim, which means that the same din which applies on Shabbos, Meisim Mechol HaKedesh, applies to Yom Kippur and apply to Yom Tov. Now, not like you're saying that there's a special inyan of Shabbos to be Mekabel to Sefer Shabbos as well. As the din Tesis Sefes Mechol HaKedesh is by a Shabbos Andrish v'bei Yom Kippur Yom Tov. That you're saying that according to the Gemara, who is going to agree to the Mechilta, that Shabbos is different than Yom Tov and Yom Kippur. Shabbos is the mitzvah not to Mekadosh and the Yisafa. That Shabbos is a mitzvah to Mekadosh the addition. But Yom Tov is the ganze in blaze achevas gavra, and you could say that on Yom Tov it's only on the achev on the gavra, nothing to do with teiref milafanav umalachev. So what do we see from here? Which means that if you're going to say that the Gemara and the Mechilta agree, but he's just adding, you have to be meisif. Mitzat HaGavra, that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Kol Mokim, which is mashma that they all apply the same. Sai Shabbos, Yom Kippur, and Sai Yom Tov. But if he's going to learn like the Mechilta is saying that Shabbos is different. Gimel. Third thing, V'ikr, the main point. From them was poskim Kelo Shulchan Aruch. From this that the authorities, including the Shulchan Aruch, the Rif, the Rosh, and Alter Rebbe brings down Simeresh Samachalif. So what does they say? If you look in the Rosh and the Rosh, the Rif and the Rosh, and then the Alter Rebbe brings this down, what does he say? Then was the poskim Kelo Shulchan Aruch paskim the Braisa now. This is Mati what we were saying. The Alter Rebbe paskins like the Gemara that mitzvah asim natera lahesim mechel ala kedesh. When es steht nicht as is da an iser velav in ton melacha in zman v'tisefer Shabbos mitzad dem was das is kodesh mitzad atzmi. Now, if you look in Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe, they don't say that if you're going to do that, there's an iser lav to do melacha by tisefer Shabbos. In other words, if the Mechilta really agrees, if the Gemara and the Mechilta are in agreement, so it should come out that when you do a malacha on Teisur Shabbos, it's Isser Lav. Yet the Alter Rebbe doesn't say that. For them is Muchach, so from all this is proven, as the Gemara hal nit vid the Mechilta. The Gemara and the Mechilta are not agreeing. When the din Teis Sefes is, vid the Pashas Alashim Gemara, Shabbos is Menayin Nor Ageder Bedin in Gavra. Which would come out like that according to the Gemara, it would come out that the whole idea of Shabbos is a inyan on the gavra that the person has to be mekablet. So we tried in Zion to maybe perhaps say that the Mechilta and the Gemara agree, and the Rebbe brought 3 reasons why you can't say that they're in agreement. Okay, so now he says, Loit it has baranal in Mechilta. So now that the Rebbe explained that according to the Mechilta, a Shabbos is Teiref Milafanav Malachirov, because there's a Chefza of Kedusha which pushes the Kedusha a little before Shabbos and a little afterwards. So now, but man euch verstehen die Sheiches von die Drasche Mechilta zu die Drasche shlefnei ze mechalel mos yumos und wie im Shabbos shnei kvasim shneim mit diber echad nemru ervas eish zachicha yavama yav yala shneim nemru mit diber echad lesil b'shan esegdim tasad lecha shneim nemru mit diber echad ma she'ef shleimer kein v'chuli. So we brought yesterday from the Mechilta that all these 2 contradictions in Torah were said with diber echad to tell us that when it comes to these times it's mutter. And then the Mechilta said that Zachar Shem Shabbos Lakachi, you have to be Meisah B'chol al Kodesh. So the Rebbe asked, and the Mefarshim asked, what's the connection between the beginning of the Mechilta and the end of the Mechilta? So he says like this: based on what I just explained, you can explain as follows. In Pirish Mechilta B'negei Din Yanavas Diber Echad Nemru Zagam Mefarshim. So, in regards to what the Mechilta said, that these 4 ideas were said by Dibra Echad. So the Mefarshim say, as the Uftu is, as Vensis da the Asay is Ibergoheb Nita, again, as the Uftu is, as Vensis da the Asay is Iberheipt Nita de Lav. So when you have the Asay, the Mefarshim explained, then there's no Lav, the Dugma. Vem is Makriv the Shnei Kvasim Yom HaShabbos. So now, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, when the Yidden brought the 2 lambs on Shabbos, is Melechatchila Nitakin Chila Shabbos. So the Chatchila, there's no Isser, you're not profaning Shabbos. So it's via Tanai in the Lav. It's like in a condition in the actual Lav. As it is Nidchal in Fal Vens is the Asay. That the Leis Asay doesn't apply when there's in the Asay. So that's how the Mefarshim explain. And he's going to explain in Andre Verter what that means. In Andre Verter, das was is makri kvasim im Shabbos. This that the Torah says that you have to bring the kvasim on Shabbos is nid nar akim asay de karbonos meisifin utmidim the Shabbos. It's not only that you're being mekayim a mitzvah asay of bringing the tmidim on Shabbos, bringing the karbonos on Shabbos. In other words, the asay is deichadem lav. The asay, really, on Shabbos, there's a lav, and there's the asay. But the asay is deichad aleis asay. Or they're not eifim from hutra. Or you could say even deeper, that it's not that it's deichad, but it's mutter. Or das is eich verbunden mit dem lav, but it's negea with a lav. In other words, benegea akravas akvasim b'migdash is that a lav min chatchil nid gezakt geworden. So what the chiddush is, what the Mechilta is saying is, like the Mefarshim explained, that when you, so, sorry. What comes out from the Mechilta is that when you have usually you could say you have an asay, you have a leis asay, and the asay is deichad leis asay. Here the vort is, the Torah is saying is that when you have the asay of shnei kvasim, let's say, do you have to bring the karbonos on Shabbos? It's not pshat that it pushes off the leis asay. A tanai is that you what's the lashon he says over here? Is there lav mechatchil gezakt geworden? So the lav was never said. When there far sein die 2 psukim gezakt geworden mit diber echad, the asay is atnai in dem lav. In other words, the asay of bringing a korban on Shabbos is a tanai in the lav. What is the condition in the lav? That when you have the lav is the mechala ma'ishumos. However, what's one of the conditions in the lav is that when it comes to asay of bringing the kvasim, you have to do that. And therefore, so now, what comes out according to the Mechilta? What comes out is that I have the asay, I have the leis asay, and a condition in the leis asay is that you have to be mekayim the asay. So now, the leis asay tells me that you have to be mekayim the asay. Now then the Mechilta says, the drasha zochem b'fanav Hashem na'achenu, mikan shem misifim chuli, mimashal azev chuli, the din for the Sefer Shabbos is nid nar adin in Gavra, nor in Shabbos Gufa. So now, what is according to the Mechilta? the din of Tesis Shabbos is not only in the actual person, but it's actually in Shabbos itself. As your Kedusha is Zich Mispasher, Milafena Malachidav, that the Kedusha now extends beforehand, spreads beforehand, and earlier afterwards. So, and he's going to explain in tests a little bit deeper what that means, but basically, we see that the idea of the beginning of the Mechilta is telling me about Hispashtos, that the alav is mispashet to the asay, and the same thing over here, Tesis Shabbos is different because it spreads beforehand, earlier, and afterwards later. Okay, Tess. It says, Ba'imik Yeser, on a deeper level. Mit bringing the drasha from Zachar, Milafana, Veshamar, Malachir, of Chuli, by bringing the expression, remember it beforehand, and guard it afterwards, as a continuation to what we said, that they were both said in the same utterance, is the Mechilta Malaben Nachan Inyan in them was Hazaev Terev. Now with this, the Mechilta teaches another point about this idea that the wolf mauls, ubehektim. And he says, the preface. The Ched is the Pirishan now, he says, seemingly, the explanation that we said before about B'dibur Echad, it's not totally, it doesn't totally suffice. Why? Because Kedetzu lozen vistin limina now, as the Asay is via Tanai in the Leisasay. You just said before, the Rebbe says, I'm explaining that a Tanai in the Leisasay is you have to be Mekayim the Asay over here, and therefore they were said B'dibur Echad. Why were they said B'dibur Echad? Because Hashem is telling us that what's a Tanai in Mechala Maisyumos, that the Asay of bringing the Kvasim. He says, he says,